One of the joys of coming to the Düsseldorf Boat Show is discovering new boats that you just don't see very often elsewhere. And behind me here is one of them. So this is the brand new world premiere of the Boarncruiser TR50. Now, Boarncruiser are a Dutch brand. They build all steel boats. And they're incredibly seaworthy as well. So even though it's a full displacement boat, this is in fact a Category A cruiser. So clearly it won't go quickly, but it will go through pretty much anything and stay as safe and stable as you like. Now, it's obviously incredibly solid, being built of steel. The only danger is obviously it weighs a lot and they can be prone to rolling with these round bilge hulls. But to get around that, you can see what they fitted here is a pair of DMS Magnus Master stabilizers. Now, these are really unusual if you haven't seen them before. They look like just a long cylinder, and the way they work is that when you engage gear, these swing out to the side and they spin really, really quickly. And it's called the Coriolis effect. What happens is when you spin one way, it provides pressure down. When you spin the other way, it provides pressure up. And you have one on each side, and they work exactly like fin stabilizers, but they're particularly good on displacement boats. So they work really well at slow speed. Obviously, they create a bit too much drag at faster speeds, but at slow speeds, they're absolutely brilliant, and they just spin really quickly one way or the other. They can change direction, and it's very, very effective. So nice to see that. And to make sure that you don't forget they're out, whenever you put the engine into neutral, they will fold back away and tuck inside. Now you can see the shaft drives there. You can either have single or twin shaft drives. This is fitted with twin Yanmar 170 horsepower engines. Obviously, that's not going to push a 50-foot boat along at any great speed. It'll do around about 10 knots, but it will do it forever. Well, not quite forever, but you can get a range of around about 1,000 nautical miles on board this boat. So it just chugs along at a slow, steady pace for 1,000 nautical miles. Now, prices for this start at around €1 million ex VAT. Obviously, that depends a lot on the spec. That's with a single engine. It's going to be more with twin engine, and totally depends what you actually do on board, because it's all completely customizable. That's one of the joys of these steel-built boats, is you have a pretty much endless choice of exactly how you spec it, even where the bulkheads go, because you don't need structural bulkheads like you do in composite craft. So there's a small tender garage at the stern here. It's really not terribly long, so you can see the tender will go in there sideways. So not going to be a big tender, but nevertheless, it is a hydraulic ram or electric ram that opens that up. Access the tender. You can see there's freshwater shower and everything there too. Relatively small bathing platform. It's not hydraulic or anything. It's all part of the steel structure. And you can see it really is absolutely everything. All steel. No GRP on there at all. So then step up on to the aft deck. Lovely cockpit area here. You can see there's a flybridge overhang that reaches all the way back to the end of the bench, so you're nicely shaded, nicely protected. Really good walk around decks on both sides. You can see there is a side boarding gate each side of this. I'm not going to open that because that's a bit of a long drop down on the stand, but everything about it just feels absolutely rock solid. Big cleats literally built into the actual structure of the boat, so there's no bolts going on there. That is welded to the structure of the boat. Now, the flybridge overhang comes right out over the side decks as well, so you're really well protected along here. You can walk up. See, there's also a break in the railings here that will spin around, lift up and slide out if you want to. I'm not going to do it now because, again, a little bit hazardous with that drop there, but it means you have got sideboarding access. And then the foredeck here, again, all of this solid steel, but there is a couple of nice sunbeds on the foredeck there. There's a big locker on either side. There you can see absolutely everything, all solid steel. Whoop, clang, there you go. Now you can see there's a couple of skylights through into the cabin down below. We'll take a look inside in a minute. Rather lovely little bench up at the front here, just gives you somewhere to sit, particularly when you're only going to be plodding along at 8-10 knots. What a lovely place to hang out. Special platform for that big anchor, really heavy duty. Obviously it's a heavy boat, so you're going to need a serious anchor with some serious chain on it. you've got an anchor locker here. You can have a quick look. There you can see all that chain flaked down in there. Whoop, clonk on the camera. And then let's carry on back down the starboard side deck. Nice to see a little opening window here next to the helm station. And then back into the cockpit. And whilst we're outside, why don't we take a quick trip up to the flybridge. Now, relatively steep, shallow steps up, but you have got good grab rails on both sides. That's good to see, and little lights set into it. And up onto the flybridge. And like everything else, this is entirely customizable. And the owner of this clearly didn't want a whole lot of furniture up here. So instead, you've just got a massive amount of space. Now, it's hard to describe just how big this is. I mean, you can hopefully get a bit of an idea on camera, but it's an enormous space because the flybridge goes right out over the side decks. It's really, really wide. Now, he's just gone for a wrap of seating around here. But of course, you could have a table, you could have that as C shape. He's got a small wet bar here, but you can have a big wet bar on this unit here because this provides a bit of headroom down below. But you can spec it exactly how you want. You could have sun pads, you could have freestanding furniture, you could have built-in seating, much bigger table, permanent table, any of the above. And even here, under these seats, you can see every single one of these, all steel locker lids. Lots of storage, small mast at the back. You can see the Raymarine GPS receivers and so on. But just a massive space you can kit out exactly how you want to. The other thing to note is there are a couple of little portholes in here, just allowing fresh air down into the saloon. So let's drop back down and have a look down there. Down that staircase. Now you can see we've got bifold doors on both sides, so they will swing out. I won't do it at the moment, but you can see they're just on little stoppers, but bifold doors that swing shut. They're also double glazed, and you can see that built into them is a sunshade. So in between the two panes of glazing is that sunshade that you can lower down. Now again, this is all very much up for grabs, but one thing that the owner of this particular boat insisted on was having solid wood furniture. So no MDF, no veneers, all of this is solid oak. Check out that. How beautifully done is that? Every single element of that is absolutely solid oak. Looks lovely and warm, feels beautiful. Again, look at all the grain on that, perfectly matching all the way down that stack of shelves. So aft galley layout and across both sides of the boat. So you've got the cooker and the refrigerator on this side. You can see it's a two-part fridge with a freezer on that side. Bosch induction hob, Siemens oven. Very traditional. Got a clock and a little barometer there. Really beautifully done. Even a special wooden holder for your kitchen towel. Big sink on this side, a small dishwasher, half size. But absolutely up for grabs. If you decided you wanted seating at the back and the galley forward or even downstairs, that's all perfectly possible. There's more cooling space here. Got a freezer in there. And that looks like, I was going to say it's a wine fridge, but no, I think that's a freezer actually. That's probably just more cool space. Not a wasted centimetre of space. Lovely little pull-out storage for all the glasses. And because this steel structure is so strong, you can get away with really thin mullions. So relatively speaking, these are very thin mullions supporting the flybridge. Fantastic visibility. Very tall upright screens. There's that opening window on that side. And these two portholes I told you about. So you can see that just lets a little bit of air in, and those are the ones that go up onto the flybridge. And that's why there is that slightly unusual moulding, because there is a cutaway section in the deck head here, just to provide a bit of extra headroom as you step up from the aft section. So I'll just spin that round. You can see there is a small step up there, so that when you step up, you've got plenty of headroom above you. Big dinette over on the port side. Fairly traditional look, but again, more of that lovely warm solid oak. This has a kind of suede effect dinette, but just a really big, simple, comfortable dining space. And the helm station itself, equally very clear, very minimalist. You're not charging along at any great speed, so at 10 knots you don't need an awful lot of information, you just need the basics in front of you. Those are the controls for the twin Yanmar engines, Raymarine VHF, big vertical ship's wheel, again much more in keeping with a kind of little ship aesthetic of cruising along at displacement speed. Bow and stern thrusters, you're absolutely going to need those, particularly if you go for the single engine boat, but again, such a big heavy twin engine boat, you have got good manoeuvrability from the twin throttles because they're quite widely spaced, but particularly on inland waterways and so on, really helpful to have bow and stern thrusters. A little bit of storage in there for your charts or sunglasses, whatever it may be. Looks like there's more storage under there. Really lovely craftsmanship. And of course the actual the sole itself is the same wood as the furniture unit, so very nice. Got a lift up television in there that pops up, but again you barely know it's there, it's so discreetly done. And then steps down to the lower deck, quite a long way down in here, and that's because you can build the floor right down almost to the hull itself. We might see if we can have a look at that, but it just means you've got really good headroom, you're deep in the boat, and look at this owner's cabin. Boarncruiser reckon that this is the only 50-foot steel boat that has a full beam owner's cabin amidships. And it really is a big one. It's really beautifully proportioned. And that's partly due to this lovely floor area at the foot of the bed, because it's not just a straight cut across bulkhead. Because it's a bit more angled, it just gives you a load more footroom, and it just makes it feel much more luxurious when you step into it, that you're not immediately facing the bed. You've got a good bit of footroom in front of you. The bed itself, you do lose a little bit of headroom just as you duck under the bed, but that is a very, very lovely master cabin. There's a little settee over on this side. We've got two stacks of shelves either side. And also good to see that they have put hull windows in. They're not big hull windows like you'd find in a typical GRP boat. They're not as big as you're going to get in a 50-foot Sunseeker or Princess, but you have at least got some natural light coming in there. Got a couple of opening portholes for ventilation, masses of storage all around, and then ensuite bathroom. Again, very nicely proportioned. Quite cleverly, they put a mirror on the ceiling overhead, which just somehow makes it feel a little bit taller than it actually is. But there is still plenty of headroom in here. You're not short of space at all. I mean, there's a good 3 or 4 inches above me, and I'm 6 foot 1 inch. But again, lots of floor room all around. Lovely big shower. All white, very clean, very minimalist, but beautifully done. Look at the curvature just around that sink. Very nice. And then moving forward through the hull, we've got a twin bunk cabin on the starboard side. Now I have to say this is a little bit narrow because the hull sides start to taper in towards the bow. That does limit the width of the cabin. But you know what, as a kid's cabin or something, that's absolutely fine. Steps up on either side of the bed. And to be fair, look how much headroom there is above there. That has got to be at least 10 foot tall at this point. So even though you are on a bunk bed, because you've got all that headroom up above, it doesn't feel nearly as claustrophobic as it would do if it was a much lower ceiling height. And there's a good clearance between the beds too. So even on the lower bunk, you've still got enough height to sit up in bed. And you'll notice that that is in fact a Pullman berth. So if you pull the, I might be able to, not sure if I can do that. No, I can't, but it's a Pullman berth. But so that bunk folds up. If you're not using it, then you've got a really nice single guest cabin. A bit of storage either side. I'll just give you an idea. I'm not going to open every single cabin cupboard, but get an idea. And this, I think, is where you can see how close it is to the hull of the boat. If I lift up these little steps, Now that there is the actual hull of the boat. So you can see we're literally, the floor is within a couple of inches of the actual bilges. So lower that down, try not to trap my fingers. And then moving forward, now this is the guest bathroom. So it's shared with the VIP in the bow and that bunk cabin we saw earlier. But again, really generously proportioned. So even though there is only the one guest bathroom, it's a very good size. And it has access both from the corridor and as an ensuite for the forward cabin. So if you are only cruising with two couples, then you can both have your own ensuite bathroom. Now this is the VIP, it's in the bow, relatively low bed height, which is unusual. But again, it just means you've got much more clearance overhead and it feels less cramped as a result. Those are the two skylights I mentioned on the foredeck. Again, even here, we've got hull windows, which is relatively unusual in steel boats, but it makes a lot of difference having a bit of natural light and of course ventilation. And there is the ensuite access. It looks like they've taken the door off for some reason. Maybe it's damaged or not quite ready, or perhaps it gets in the way and clutters it up a bit, but you can see that there is hinge space for the door on that bathroom so that you can have ensuite access directly from the cabin or from the corridor. So let's go back up and let me show you the engine room. You'll see there's a bit of storage as you come up the staircase too. And then we will see if we can get access to this engine room. I think I need to lift that up. Actually just swing that door closed. There we go. Oh, lock that into place. Now, engine hatch. I think this is going to be relatively heavy, because if, like everything else, it's made of steel, that's going to need... Oh, actually, we've got a couple of struts that are helping me lift that up. It's not nearly as heavy as you think it might be. There we go. That's in place. Now, if I drop down these steps, we can see those two engines. Now, one of the reasons there's room for that great big owner's cabin amidships is that these are on V-drive shaft. So you can see the engine is slightly tilted towards the bow, goes into the gearbox here, and then the shaft reverses back out. And that keeps the whole thing much more compact. It means you don't have to have the engines stealing valuable space from the lower deck further forward. But obviously relatively small engines given the size of the boat. We're not trying to force this onto the plane. We're just tootling along at 10 knots or so. So that means plenty of space around them. Really nicely lit. We've got fuel tanks on either side, perfectly balanced. So that's all nicely insulated in there. And the second one over there. We've got Mastervolt battery packs back here. We've got a small, tiny Fisher Panda generator there. I'm guessing that's a variable speed generator. So in combination with those big Mastervolt battery packs, you probably don't need to run that generator very often. And then of course, the steering gear further aft. So let's make our way back up. I'll lower that in just a minute because that looks like it might take a bit of... Oh no, there we go. I managed to do it with my foot. Lower that down. Close it up. There we go. And let's finish up sitting on this rather lovely cockpit. I said we'd bring you something different, and I think this absolutely fits the bill. And while it's not going to be to everyone's taste, if you want something that is totally bespoke, you can have it all hand-built, customized, pretty much how you want it, in a really lovely, beautifully built, full displacement, full steel boat. So I hope you enjoyed that tour. Thank you very much for watching. Do let me know what you make of the boat in the comments. Particularly unusual one, particularly interesting, but hopefully it may appeal to some of you. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.